Hello everyone and welcome back to another video with call. This is Osborne here, and today we'll be looking at pivot tables and the pivot by function. Alright, so the pivot table and the pivot by function. Now, in our previous lessons, we have a feel of how pivot table works or how we can insert pivot tables in our data. So we know that the pivot table is a tool that allows us to summarize, analyze, explore, and present large amounts of data effectively or efficiently. And it also helps us to quickly extract meaningful insights from raw data by rearranging it dynamically. Right. However, there is this function called the PivotBY function, right, which was introduced in Excel 365 and Excel 2021. So if you have any of these versions of Excel, you have this PivotBY function. So the PivotBY function also does that. It's also a dynamic function that summarizes data similar to that of a pivot table, but in a cell column, right? So what we are going to do first, we're going to look at how we work with pivot table and how we can also use PivotBY function to extract or summarize data within a large data set. Now, to get our pivot table, what we are going to do is that I'm going to select our entire data, right? And I go to my insert tab. You can see pivot table by here. And we also have, I'm using Excel 365. I don't know the one you're using, but Excel 365 also gives some recommended pivot table that you can work with. Right here, we want to create our own pivot table. So I'll click on it. I want to create it in a new worksheet. Right, and I hit OK. Now, this is where we build our pivot table, right? Now, what I'm looking at is I'm going to group the data based on the region and the products, right? And also we also look at the revenues coming from those products per the region they are in, right? So my values will be my revenue. I bring it here, value. Then my rows, I want my rows to be the products. Alright, and I want the column to be the region. So you can see that we have this nice pivot table over here, right? This nice pivot table over here. Alright, we have this nice pivot table over here. So we have keyboards for the for each region, revenue from keyboard for the south region, and so forth and so on. Now this was really fully done using the our pivot table, right? So this was done using our pivot table. So let me name myself pivot table. Alright. Now we can also go ahead, still using our pivot table, right, and create a new one, maybe using the sales persons and the revenue they generated, right? Per, let's say the regions. Alright. So with that one, so with our data selected, I can come here. Alright, sorry. Okay, so still with our data selected, I can come to insert, and I can insert a new one in a new sheet. So with this one, so I also build it to my revenue on my values. Then I have sales rep. So my sales rep, I want to put my sales rep on the rows. Alright, so my various sales rep and the revenue that they generated. And I also want to look at them based on the products that they sold. Right. Good. So I can also see these beautifully generated over here for me. Alright. So let me for us to have a feel of how it all looks like, let me just also copy and paste it over here so that we can look at how that one also is. Alright, so this is what we generated using our pivot table. Now, what we are going to do is we're also going to look at what or how we can also go about with the PivotBY function. Now, when we come here, right, and we want to use the PivotBY function, know that as always, we type our equal to the PivotBY. Now, PivotBY. So you can see the syntax over here. So the row fields. Alright. So if you look at here, my row fields was the how do you call it? My east north, so that's the region. So I'll go back to this sheet. So my row field, let me select my region. Alright, then my column field, I'll select the product. Alright, now the values we are dealing with is the revenue. Right, so also select the revenue. Then the function that we are using. So what are we doing? What are we doing? What we are doing is that sorry. Okay, so let me come here and correct it. Alright, so my values is the revenue. So let me correct it over here. Alright, now when it comes to the function, we have a lot of functions that we can do. So if you are looking at the sum, or we are looking at, let's say, the percentage of the average, the median, you can all go ahead and even look at the variance of population, variance of sample, right? So in this instance, we are dealing with sum. I can go ahead and close my bracket and hit enter. Now you can see that immediately I hit enter, right? A nice pivot slide table generates over here for me, alright, which is similar to this, but that one has been transposed. Alright, so if you want to get exactly like the one over there, so you go to PivotBY, then I select my product, then my column fields, it's my region, then my values are the revenue. Alright, then I'm looking for the sum. I double click. I can close my bracket, so you can see it over here in the formula bar. Okay, and I hit enter. Really, I hit enter. You can see that a pivot table table have been done over here for us, and this is what the output that we also generated using the pivot tables over here, right? So let me copy it and put it side by side so that we can go ahead and compare and see how it is. Alright, so let me just paste it over. Now with this, you can see the various. So you can see. So let me number to Control Shift 1. Alright, so you can see 4195 over here. Right. So this is how you can also use the PivotBY function if you are using the a later version of Excel, or you can also use the pivot table. Alright, so each of them is very flexible. However, there are some limitations when it comes to, or some advantage over the pivot tables over the PivotBY function. So for example, with pivot tables, you can get the option to add filters to it. Right. So for example, with the same data, I can go ahead and select it. Alright, then I go to insert and create a new pivot. So I want to build a new one. So I can select my revenue over here, my regions on my columns, and the product on my rows. Then I can filter them based on, let's say, the sales rep. Alright. So immediately I put the filter over there. Okay, you can see that with this, we have an option over here to choose which sales rep we are looking at. Alright, so immediately I select the Angela Brown. You can see the revenue that came in for Angela Brown. I can also do the same for, let's say, George Long, and you can also see it over here. So this is one advantage of the pivot table over the PivotBY function. However, the pivot function is also very simple and easy to understand. Right? So thank you very much for this lesson. See you in the next video. Bye.